we'll take questions, all that kind of stuff. Then what do? You just mute us? So you'll leave the pictures of us in there, and then I'm gonna put my mask on, and then but you'll mute it.
Hear you until you tell me you're ready.
And then you'll keep an eye on if we have someone new in there?
Yeah. So right now we've got 17 in there.
Okay.
But we can keep an eye on that live chat.
Okay. Can you tell who those people are?
Uh-uh.
No. That's me. Okay.
Are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good morning. My name is Kelly McGovern. I'm the superintendent for Sweetwater number 1. Welcome to our first live forum that we've done here in the district. We have some people here with me. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. What we've got this morning is an opportunity for some two-way communication to ask for input from our community, from our stakeholders, on their ideas and suggestions for the extreme budget shortfall that the district is going to be working through this school year. Before I go into that, I'd like to give people an opportunity to introduce themselves so that way our audience knows who's in the room and that we're able to answer any questions that you might have. Nicole.
Good morning. I'm Nicole Bolton, and I am the Human Resource Director for Sweetwater School District number 1.
Dan Celeroli, Director of Facilities.
You ready for me, Zach? Yeah. Okay. I'm Stephanie Tolman. I'm the Chief Information Officer, and I will kick it over to Jody.
Hello, I'm Jody Garner. I am the Chief Academic Officer for Sweetwater 1. Dan.
Good morning. I'm Scott Duncan, the CFO of the district.
Good morning. I'm Casey Arnoldi. I'm the Special Services Director for Sweetwater 1.
Again, good morning to our audience out there. Thank you for being a part with us this morning. Very quickly, we're going to talk about why are we here and what is the process that we've been doing up until these live forums for this morning. And then we're really interested in what our stakeholders have to say. So Zach, there's a document real quick about the process. Could you display that real quick? Thank you. The school district was actually received information at the end of August that Governor Gordon asked school districts to voluntarily make a 10% cut in their budgets due to $500 million shortfall that our state would have for K-12 education. And following that, all school districts also received a letter from the Select Committee on School Finance and Recalibration to gather input about what that budget cap would have on school district operations. So in order to meet that task, Sweetwater number 1 assembled a cost savings task force. We have done that in previous years, in 2016, 2017, and it was a great process to gather input from the stakeholders and what they would like to see in their school district as we work through. And with that, Zach, we're going to go ahead and keep going through real quickly so we can hear what our audience has to say. On that cost savings task force, we have approximately 42 people that are members of that, and they represent a variety of positions, from school district employees to parents to legislators to business owners. all different avenues. We have a student that participates on there as well. In our task force, we've met 2 times. We have 4 more, or excuse me, 2 more times for a total of 4 that will be meeting. Our next meeting is this Thursday evening, and what we're interested in is what all of our audience has to say about education and what do they value in education, and also what cost-saving ideas can they share with us. And the idea is we'll bring back all of that input on Thursday evening back to the cost savings task force. And then we will take a look at all of those ideas. The task force isn't a decision-making group, but rather it's an entity and a vehicle to gather input for, as we work through probably one of the biggest obstacles our district has had for some time. So that's a big picture idea of what our task force is doing. And then we're open for any questions. I know Nicole has some quick information that she'll be sharing, as well as Scott also. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, and then it'll go to Scott, and then we'll open that up so we can hear from our audience. Thank you for joining us this morning, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, or if you can be with us for a little while. We appreciate all ideas.
Good, sorry. Good morning. Just to give a little overview of some of the cost savings that we have done since 2015, 2016. 2015, 2016, 75 paraprofessionals were RIF from the district. In 2016, 2017, salaries were frozen. 9 teaching, 5 central administration office positions, the assistant superintendent, foundation director, administrator, foundation secretary, were all absorbed, and the list does continue. This document is on the website under the Cost Savings Task Force. In 2017, 2018, we froze salaries for a second year. Lincoln Elementary was closed, and the start and end times changed for schools. We also offered early retirement incentives, and we absorbed 25 certified positions. In 2018, 2019, our salaries were frozen for a third year. More certified positions were absorbed. Special schedules were adjusted. And then in 2019, 2020, we were able to unfreeze. We were able to unfreeze some of our steps. Social studies resource adoption occurred, but we weren't able to fill 25 of our teaching positions. And we did have to still subsidize our lunch service. And now we are in 2021, and again, we had certified positions that we were unable to fill. Some of those we have absorbed for the time being. Others we have filled with long-term subs. In summary, the district does run really thin, lean. We have been making cuts over the last few years to try to be fiscally responsible and stay within our budget. But being that the district runs lean, we do not have a ton of extra admin positions. We do not have a ton of extra teaching positions. It means that with the severity of cuts that could potentially happen, that it's going to be looking at very large things in order to meet those cuts, if we're even able to meet them. Did you want me to go over class size as well? Or did you want Scott to go ahead and?
Nicole or Scott, do you have a preference on that?
I don't have a preference. You can keep rolling if you want.
There's also another document on the website under the Cost Savings Task Force that breaks out each of our buildings for K through 6 and what our current sections are that we have in each school. So such as if we have 3 sections of kindergarten and the sections that the schools can actually hold. So you can see what our capacity is. This is a little bit deceiving this year compared to past years, just because with COVID, our enrollment is down and we're not sure if it's really all because of COVID or because of the economy at this time and people moving out. But on this document, if you scroll down, Zach, the green is our current. And if you go down, then in the purple, this would be an example if class size,
The same for next year.
yeah, is the same for next year. Just with our current enrollment, we would be able to reduce 4 sections. But if you scroll down to the blue, this would be an example of class size increased and took, the legislature is,
Nicole, what's a section? What does that mean when you say sections reduced in red on that left side?
so sections are such as if we have like 3 kindergarten sections at a school. If we're reducing a section, I could reduce a kindergarten section and take it down to 2. Thank you.
So would an example be that Stagecoach is a 5-section building, so there's 5 of each grade level in that building? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
The legislature is proposing increasing class size. So in the blue, if class size increased K-3 to 25 students, and then 4 through 12 increased to 30 students, you would see that by our current enrollment projections, that we would be able to reduce 10 sections total. And then even worst case scenario at the very bottom, it's almost like a greenish yellow. Oh, it's green on there. If class size was to increase for K-3 up to 30 students and for 12 up to 35 students, we would be able to reduce 29 sections. So consolidate sections and move more kids into a classroom. Now, when I'm going over this data, I want to make sure everybody is very clear that the district is not advocating for this by any means. But with again, with the severe amount of cuts, the severity of the cuts that are being proposed, the district is going to have to take, I guess, some really large and drastic measures in order to meet those cuts. And so these are the things that the cost savings task force is looking at. But again, we are not advocating for this. Superintendent McGovern, Chair Jellicoe, and Scott Duncan, our CFO, have been constantly on with the legislature, giving them the facts and showing them the devastation that some of these actions would have on our district.
Thanks, Nicole. Scott, you want to talk a little bit about what the budget, what are we looking at?
Sure, you bet. Hey, Zach, can you pull up the talking points? Talking points? So to give you some idea about how big this mountain is, the 10% cut is about 8.14 million. A 20% cut would be 16.28 million. And a 30% cut would be 24.42 million. For certified positions, this would result in a reduction in force with newer staff vacating the job and possibly leaving the state. This will present a future recruiting problem and teacher shortage, including certification concerns. Sweetwater One currently experiences difficulty in recruiting all certified positions, including special education certified staff, and has so for many years. As far as our budget goes, we know going into the next year that we'll have a deficit of a little over 3 million. It'll be 7.8 million the following year and 12.8 million the year after that. And this reduction in foundation funding is largely due to a decrease in ADMs. And so what's happening is our enrollment is decreasing, as well as our 3-year rolling average is catching up with us.
Scott, can I ask a quick question? What would the
course.
3-year rolling average be? I mean, as someone who isn't in education and not in the district hasn't been in the district and hasn't been in education, when you look at those numbers, I guess I would just want to make sure that people understand exactly where we're already looking at budget cuts.
Sure. So we get funded at the higher of the current year ADMs or the 3-year rolling average. And so if you're increasing enrollment, you're getting funded on the kids that you have in the most recent year. If you're decreasing enrollment, like we have been for a number of years, you get funded at the higher of the 3-year rolling average. So if you keep on going down, then that's where our ADMs are catching up with us. Our rolling average is getting lower and lower. But what it does is it has a smoothing effect, so you're not getting, hit one year when you're going down and then increase the next year when you're going up.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Steph. So the next part of it is basically what we just talked about. The block grant is lowered automatically and decreased enrollment, and allowing for a 3-year rolling average allows the district time to adjust, which is that rounding factor. So for the next year and the few years after that, we've got a pretty big hill to climb.
Thank you, Scott. Just a couple of things, and then we're very open to take any questions or input, ideas that you have for cost savings. On the website where it has Cost Savings Task Force, it has all of the documents that the task force has used so far. So everything from insurance premiums are on there, staffing in all of the classrooms, K-12, class sizes, what positions are grant funded at the central administration building. That's a common question. People always ask about reducing positions at the central administration. So in there, there's a chart about how many people actually work in each department. And surprisingly, how many of those are grant-funded positions for those. We've got a frequently asked questions document. So if there's things that have come up, we're gathering all those to make sure that we get those answers out to people as quickly as we can. But with that, actually, we're open to hear from you or any questions that you've got. We've got our chat open and working for us, so we're checking all of that as we go. So if there's something on your mind, we welcome your input.
So Zach, while we wait for questions, do you want to show everyone where to find the Cost Savings Task Force page on the website, just so they can go and kind of browse through that information independently? So you see right at the top of the school district page, we have the Cost Savings Task Force for 2021. If you just click on that, that will take you to all the resources, and it's a constantly changing document. A big thank you to Debbie Veras for keeping the website up for us. We have the live broadcasts of our meetings. We are doing the meetings, I guess not a live broadcast, but a recording. But I just want to take a second to say we're doing each of the meetings similarly to how we're having our teachers work in the classroom with the swivel cameras. We're using the swivels to record the meetings. I will say for the first meeting, I did not present the screen in the Google meeting, so it's a lot of looking at the wall, but I did do an explanation below that. I know many of our teachers have seen that. For the second meeting, we did a little bit better. So you are encouraged and welcome to go back and kind of look through those meetings to see.
Zach, if you scroll down a little bit on there we go. There's all the documents. And if you keep on going for right there, that November 5th, it's got the live broadcast recorded. And again, like Stephanie had mentioned, we've been using the swivel camera for all of the meetings as well.
So any questions anybody has, if you want to go to the live chat in the YouTube, you can type out your question and we will read the question and be happy to answer it. There's a lot of information to go over, which we easily could go over every little bit of it. What did it take us for the cost savings task force? 2 hours, but we know we don't have that. So that was a very quick, brief summary. So please ask away. Yeah, because those questions that come on there, we'll put them on the frequently asked questions. The question came up, is there data on the website for the savings for the 4-day school year next year? There is a page on there with substitute costs. I had said this last night at the board meeting, but last year when the alternative calendar task force got together, that alternative calendar was not to look at cost savings at the time. But now that we are in this situation and having to look at budget cuts, everything is on the table, including the 4-day week. And so we do have a paper on there that gives the information of sub costs broke down by day and then so vertically. And it is for the last 3 years. Last year's costs are not accurate for the whole year because we had to cut it off in March due to COVID hitting. They're accurate up into March. And then horizontally, you'll see the different kind of leaves and what it costs us and sub costs. So honestly, depending what day of the week is chosen as the designated day off, and we will have to look at data for cost saving measures. It looks kind of across the board, like Fridays are our highest sub day. And then we have a lot of subs on Tuesdays and Wednesdays due to professional development over the past years in the district. It could potentially save us money there too, as our goal, and this was part of that alternative task force, was to move professional development and PLCs more outside of the classroom time to keep our teachers in the classroom. So there is potentially, give or take, about $500,000 worth of savings, but that's a good chunk. Now that's only with subs. There are other areas that we can look at for cost savings. I guess one thing I do want to reiterate is that the district at all costs will do everything it can not to hurt its employees. And I'm proud to say that in the 5 years that I've been in this position, when we've been tasked with this, we've been able to offer things so that we didn't have to do a reduction in force with our certified staff. And, there's no guarantee that it won't go there, but we will do everything in our power to not hurt our employees. But there is the sub costs on there that is related to the 4-day week for students. Staff will be working every other designated day off.
I think it's important also to address that everything we've done, it's with the primary focus of the students. And as you look at those sub costs, that document on there, the leaves aren't necessarily just the teachers. That also includes our administrative staff. So when you're looking there and seeing the sick days, the days aren't necessarily all teachers, but the dollar amounts that are tied to those different leave types are the actual sub costs for those days. And the main focus is what's best for our kids. And we know the best thing for our kids is having a qualified teacher in the classroom with them. We had another question on the YouTube feed, Eastside Elementary, asking us to tell them more about the possible 1-cent tax. And could that help us at all?
Scott?
I'll take a shot at that one. So they're talking about a 1-cent sales tax specifically dedicated to fund education. And that 1 cent would be enough to bridge the gap as they estimate it now. That still would have to work its way through the legislature, of course, and who knows what it's going to end up doing. But anyway, that's one of the ideas on the table of how to bridge that budget funding gap.
I think one of the things, we've got a question coming in from Whitney. I think one of the things too, Nicole said it really well about, we always want to do what's best, what we can for our employees. I think the other thing too, and I know Nicole went over about all the different budget cuts that we've done year by year, beginning in 2015, 16 up to our current. I think the other thing that needs to be said too is we have stayed away from hurting any of the programs that we have for our kids. So really taking care of the people, because that's what makes your organization great. So doing our best to look out for our staff and keeping, the needs of our students really close to heart, and the programs that benefit kids in so many different ways.
Oh, Steph,
Sorry.
did you have something?
Yeah,
to
I was
add?
just going to say that we have a couple of questions.
That's
Kelly,
what I
you started to address it. We have Whitney asking if we do have to RIF certified staff, have you considered how that will happen? Years of employment, performance evaluations?
So Whitney, that is a good question, and I know that that is something that is weighing on all of our employees' minds. First and foremost, I want to reiterate what I said and what Kelly said. We will try to avoid a reduction in force. That is what RIF stands for. Off the top of my head, I cannot remember the policy, but I can get that out to you. We have a policy that actually dictates that, and it does go off of years of employment. So the
I want to
cost
speak up though,
savings-
Nicole, because I think it's really important to say that in the past, we've done the early retirement incentives, we've closed open positions. There's been a lot of things that the district has done to prevent that from happening.
And we will do that again. I know that I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but I do know that the cost savings task force is currently, that is where we're at in the process, is coming up with any ideas that we can. And I know that in a couple of the groups I overheard, those haven't come forward yet, but looking at early retirement incentives, we'll do whatever we can to avoid the reduction in force, but I will get that policy information out. But we are guided by policy on that. And then we had another question that I can answer with I know a lot of companies have looked at reducing pay. Has that been considered? I would say that the 3 years that we froze salaries, that would be considered reducing pay, even though we didn't take their pay away per se. It froze that step that, gives them the cost of living. And then when benefits increase, it is, in essence, reducing their pay. Honestly, Jenny, if we can avoid that at all costs as well, the problem is it's hard to retain teachers as is, and it is very hard to recruit teachers, especially when someplace such as Utah is so close to us and they raise their pay to match our base. We aren't as appealing to the younger generation unless they really like the outdoors and what Wyoming has to offer. And Wyoming does have a lot to offer, but we don't have Target, and we don't have the arts, and we don't have a lot of the things that are at their fingertips in Utah. So, being competitive there is kind of hard. So thank you for posting that policy in there, Kelly.
Gotcha.
So that is a little bit difficult, because we will lose more staff if we do that. But I can't say that anything and everything is not being looked at this time.
So just for information, the policy for those of you who may be watching this later on our website, if you go to policies, it's policy GCPA that addresses the reduction in force. We also had a question from Josh. Is there a breakdown of the costs of all the extracurricular activities, including sports, clubs, etc.? And is a reduction of extracurricular activities on the table?
I don't know if we have that. We do
It
have
was
a breakdown of our.
Requested for the next meeting, I
Okay,
think.
we do have a breakdown. I know we have that because we had to do it when we were bringing softball on. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Scott?
Yep, I can speak to that. We just ran these numbers earlier this week. The total district cost is about 1.6 million. That breaks down to Black Butte High School of $1,000, Farson of about 250,000, Rock Springs Junior High, 269,000, and Rock Springs High School, 1,084,000. And so those would be one of the things I think would come forward with some of the potential cost savings ideas.
I think one thing to add on there too, Scott, thanks for running those numbers for us and getting that ready to go. That question, Josh, actually came from one of the task force members. And so any questions that come forward there, we'll put them on that frequently asked questions, that FAQ document, and we'll get that uploaded. So great question, but we'll get that information up there for you. It's not posted on the website yet because it came just recently for it, but we'll be sure to get those numbers in there. But that's where it'll be located so that you know.
Yeah, I think that actually came from my group at the last cost savings task force. I'm sure other groups looked at it as well, just as far as what a pay to play or different options. They wanted to see what the costs were for the activities and the athletics.
None of this is easy to hear or say. I mean, these are tough questions
terrible.
that you are asking, and they're very tough to answer because it's one thing to think it, and then when you have to verbally say it out loud, it's those kind of things that hurt our kids. You know, any of the staff stuff that directly hurts the kids, and so this is scary.
I think it's huge for those of you who were unable to join us for the board meeting last night. There was a lot of talk on the 1 cent sales tax, and the impact that that could have on education to kind of offset the costs that we've lost from our natural resources in the state. So if you have some time or would like to, you can always go back and watch our board meeting from last night, because I know that several of our trustees addressed that. So that could be a huge savings. Speak to your legislators.
I think one thing on there too, Josh brought up a really good point in his question. He said the reduction of activities on the table. I just think it's important to say that right now, there are no decisions on any of those, that it's really just what ideas do people have. So we don't want anybody to think that if they ask a question or if they bring an idea forward that that's going to be the end all be all for that. The task group is not decision making, so that is not their decision to carry, and same for all of those that are participating in the chat. So we appreciate the questions and getting that good information out there. That's really based on facts and accurate information to move forward. So I just want to make sure that that's said too.
And I think just a reminder, this is ideas to bring to the cost savings task force, which then turns around and brings to that goes to the board to ultimately make that decision.
On that document, I think on the document that I had gone over earlier, and then there is a similar document on there, it does show also our buildings and their current capacity by students and by sections. So some of I think almost all of our schools right now have some empty classrooms because they can hold more than what we currently have. So all of this information on there is, it's eye-opening. So Zach, if you scroll down just a little bit, at the bottom, it does show that the building max, so that 15, 20, 15, that shows the max amount of classrooms that we could have. So like Walnut is a K-4 school, and we can have a max of 15 classrooms, and currently they have 15 sections. So they have 3 kindergarten, 3 first. Sage Elementary would be another one. They can hold 20 sections, and currently we only have 15 sections filled. There's some eye-opening data to a lot of this. And again, I think one of the scary things is because of COVID, we're not really sure if it's our decrease in enrollment is mainly because people have moved out of state or because people have chosen a different route for education this year. So normally we are pretty close to projecting what next year's enrollment would be, and that one That one is a little scary this year. It's a little more gray than black and white as usual.
I think we've always wanted the crystal ball, but it's cloudier than ever during a worldwide pandemic.
You know, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I'm wondering on that same document, excuse me, Zach, on that same one up there on the top, it talks about the district buildings. There's a couple of charts on there. We've got Dan here with us. I don't want to go over, skim something that it's some really good information while we've got that up. So Dan, do you want to walk us through real briefly about what does all that mean on there? And, why that information is just good information to have for us?
Sure. What that chart actually shows is the years that the schools were built, obviously, and then there's what they call an FCI score. The FCI score is a score that comes from an independent engineering firm that is hired by the state every 4 years. And this scoring is required by state statute. So every 4 years, a contract is let out to an engineering firm. They come around, they go through all the buildings. Now, what they do is there's approximately 24 component level scores, and those are like your roofing structures, roofing coatings, mechanical systems, things like that that go into the building itself. They go around, they look at what the condition of those that equipment or those components are. They give them a score, and the score goes from 1 to 5, 1 being the needs to be replaced immediately, 5 being brand new. Then they have this long calculated formula that they plug these numbers into, and they come out with, when you see the FCI 2016, that score goes from a 0.0772 as high as a 0.3450. Now, once that score goes in, the higher the score, the worse condition the buildings are. And if you look at Lincoln, Lincoln has the highest scores, built 1950. And so that building is a non-issue really because of the fact that it's a wood frame building. There's lots of issues with the foundations and things like that. So that building is slated to be demoed. But then you go down to the Rock Springs High School, Desert View, and Overland Walnut. Those are in Westridge. Those are the next 4 or 5 scores that all are in the twos. Actually, it goes clear down to Desert School in Wamsutter. Those are still later vintage buildings. They do have some high scores. Those scores, I will say, will change. On the average, we spend with major maintenance money roughly $3 million a year improving our buildings. And this year was no exception. And so a lot of those scores they'll be changed. They'll actually show lower than what they currently are. Rock Springs High School, however, we can spend $1 million on that school, and we have. And because of the size of the building, it's really tough to change that score. The mechanical system has an extremely low score. The foundation, we've got some of the building that's kind of sliding away, and in years from now, it might be devastating to that building. But there are some key issues that need to be addressed that would take millions of dollars to do, and not to mention shut the school down or good portions of that school for quite some time in order to do it.
Dan, I
So-
have just a quick question. I'm sorry. I just think
That's
it's really important because for those of us who've been in the community forever, you hear people saying, why are you building new schools? Why do you spend so much money on building maintenance? And when you're saying we spend over $1 million a year on maintenance using major maintenance fund, I think a big part of the community doesn't understand that money is totally separate
Right.
from
Okay, yeah,
from the
and
rest.
That's a good point. Major maintenance money comes from the state of Wyoming, and it can only be used for facility maintenance. And when they talk about maintenance, they classify it as major maintenance. The definition of major maintenance is repair and replacement of. And that doesn't include, when it says repair and replacement of, what they consider to be routine maintenance. Routine maintenance comes from a different funding stream, and that would be the block grant or the foundation. So major maintenance money, they calculate your allowable square footage. Allowable square footage includes items like your ADM. And also, when they build a building, they put a formula together. You're allowed so many square feet per student, and that varies from grade level to grade level. And that's how they come up with a determining factor of allowable square footage for that building. Now, anything above that allowable square footage is considered an enhancement. enhancements are to be funded strictly at the local level. They do give us 10% money, and 10% money can be used on enhancements, providing all of your normal major maintenance items have been addressed. So going back to the scores that I talked about earlier with the 1 to 5, if you have 1s, 2s, 3s that look like they might go to a 2, that has to be addressed every year in my facility plan, which is approved on a local level by our school board, and then it's gone through with a fine-tooth comb at the state level. And I have to show that that money has been dedicated to rectify our 1s and 2s prior to using that money on 10%. Now, we do have some lower scoring buildings, and those are the newer buildings. The newer buildings, as we all know, have air conditioning in them. And that brings up another score that's not shown on this because it wasn't until this year that the FCNI score is being looked at. FCI is Facility Condition Index. FCNI is Facility Needs Index. So needs means equitability. Does every student in the district have the same environment for learning as the kids across town? Obviously, if you have a school that has air conditioning, it's kind of difficult to argue that the kids in Sage, Stagecoach, the newer districts or the folks that are in Overland, Westridge, Walnut have a better environment in the warmer weather than they do in those other schools. So it becomes an issue as far as, how do we get those schools up in their, to lower their scores as far as the overall FCI score and provide equitability. Especially since this year, one of the things that's gone in front of the select committee is the talk of a possible cut in major maintenance funding. Right now, major maintenance funding, they give us in the formula, a 2% multiplier. It was supposed to go up to 2.5% this year and continue on for the rest of the year because one of the studies has indicated that all of the buildings throughout the entire state are underfunded. There's talk about reducing from the current 2%, instead of raising it to 2.5%, to lower it to 1.75. That would reduce our major maintenance annual by a couple $100,000, which in a district that receives, a little more than $3 million, a couple $100,000 would definitely change how we do things around the district as far as major maintenance and how we schedule stuff. And as I said, our regular preventive maintenance program is all, it's been cut. It's been cut since I got here. When I got here, we had 14 people in maintenance as far as facility workers. We're now down to 10. And, that's a pretty big chunk to absorb. We have more square footage than we did before. And if they reduce our major maintenance money and our general fund money, which will reduce how much money we get for preventive maintenance, it's going to affect our buildings. And we're going to have to take a look at how that affects our buildings and how it affects, student environment.
Awesome, Dan. Thank you. We had a couple more questions on there. Mrs. Willie, when do these cost savings have to be decided by? Because as you said, enrollment could change and go up quite a bit next year. And then also this could cause potential problems with filling those positions last minute.
So I'll take that question. I'm going to start with the latter of the two. When this could cause potential problems with filling those positions, absolutely. And from the HR personnel side, that is one of my biggest fears, because not knowing what we're going to do. So if a position becomes vacated, we'll absorb stuff through attrition, again, to try and avoid hurting staff. But what this does is I will not be going to job fairs. I will not be sending principals to job fairs. I won't open jobs up to be filled because I don't know where we're going to be, which puts it off later and later and later, which means you're right. Just like the past years, the cuts have hurt us in filling positions, and I fully anticipate that it's going to hurt us in filling positions ahead of time, especially if people are worried about jobs, then they start going somewhere else. I mean, there's a domino effect that happens from this. Now, the first part to that question, when do these cost savings have to be decided by? Hopefully never. The point to this cost savings task force, honestly, is to plan for the worst and hope for the best. Right now, we don't know where the legislature is going to go. What they've asked us to do versus what's actually going to happen could be two very different things. And so we have always been proactive in the sense of planning, because if the decision comes at the last hour, we have to be ready to execute. I believe, Scott and Kelly can answer this, but I believe that the legislature was supposed to make a decision, or is supposed to give some information earlier on, but now there is talk that it's going to be pushed back potentially to March or April, which that is even worse for us. So honestly, we're planning for the worst, but we're hoping for the best. And I agree. I like the never answer. But I'll let Kelly and Scott jump in to talk about the timeline of what and the legislature has just thrown a bunch of stuff out there. So really, we have no idea the exact thing that's about to come. It's just what they've kind of thrown out there or asked us to start looking at.
Thanks, Nicole. One thing that I would add on there is at the beginning, we talked about where we always feel it's important to advocate for the district and for the students and the staff in our community. And we will always continue to do so. Their next meeting, the recalibration, that's the committee that talks about the school funding. Their next meeting, I believe it was going to be the 14th and 15th of December. When I checked the Legislative Service Office website just recently over the weekend, I believe that they had moved it to December 17th and 18th. So we will follow up with that, and the task force will be done, I believe, November 19th. And then we'll have some information all put together. So we'll be able to deliver that information back to the legislature, where their question was, what cost savings ideas and what would be the ramifications of these budget cuts. And they would be devastating, but we would have that factual information to be able to say, this is what we're looking at. This is what class sizes would be, which is not in the best interest of kids. It's not good for teachers. It's not good for student learning. But we would be able to have that information. So I know that that's one of our next steps. But I think anything that you can do to get information out to people, the sooner the better. Accurate information, honest information. It's not fun to talk about situations like this, but the more we can get that out there for people so that they understand, I think the better off we can be, especially for our families. It's important for kids to be in school and have their teachers with them. Kids need their teachers. Scott, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that on there, or if we
No.
were good.
Yeah, I was looking for the dates. They start in January, about the middle part of January. And I think it,
Oh, the 12th for the legislature. I think it's January 12th through March 2nd is, I believe, the current plan. I could be misplaced on that, but I think that's what
I
that might
think
be.
that's true. And in terms of the timing, if they push that back, that will put us in a bind. Because, for recruiting, we pretty much have to know what positions we're going to need to fill, going forward, and have time to fill those and recruit, so that later that is the more of a bind that puts us in.
I think it's important to say one thing that came up in the cost savings task force is this is a little bit of deja vu, but it's so much worse than it was the last time. If you go to our website under the superintendent link at the top of the page, we did this once before. I think it was in 16, 17. Is that right, Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did this once before in 16, 17, and I know that there were a ton of ideas and a ton of recommendations that came forward, but it was really waiting for the legislative session to end to see what the impact was going to be before any decisions could have been made. So if you want to see what was done previously with the cost savings task force, you can find that information on our website. We had a question. What is the fiscal year? Does it start in July? Yes, it starts July 1st through June 30th. I don't know if Scott has anything to add. I'm happy I could answer a question.
Yeah,
That
that's
makes
good.
me excited.
Yep.
Yay, me. Okay. Another question we've had is, have sports and activities lost a lot of money due to COVID and restricted attendance of those events?
Yes, but not from our general budget. Our general budget funds our sports and activities, but the money that is generated for people attending and the loss of concession stands and just those little things that happen during the events, that definitely has, well, there's not been any income coming in for that extra money that kind of goes into an associated account that goes directly back to our student athletes and our students in activities. So in that sense, yes, it's, it's not significant, but it is, I guess. I mean, any penny counts. And then, oh, I know, while we're waiting for more questions to come in, Casey Arnoldi is our special education director, and I think that it's good for the public to hear. I mean, if you go to talk to your senators or your legislators, our special education comes out of the general fund for the most part to start with, and then we're reimbursed the year after. And for many years, we were 100% reimbursed because by federal law and regulations, we are required to fund special ed based off of a student's needs and IEPs. But because it got capped, the district is having to make up the difference out of the general fund by no choice. And rightfully so, to meet the needs of our students that have disabilities. But I think we're upward of almost 2 million in supplementing that now, or of what's not being, 1.5 to 2 million that's not being reimbursed. So that's coming out of our general fund. And so Casey, would you like to just inform the public about that side of it while we're waiting for more questions to come in?
I think one of the huge issues we have with special ed is that we were capped in 1819, which put us over close to 800,000, 749,000 over what our costs were. The problem with special ed is that you have a maintenance of effort that you have to fulfill every year, which means we have to spend at least what we spent the year before or more in order to receive federal funds. So you have kind of those little pieces that you have to fill. The problem with Sweetwater One is we're not losing students, we're gaining every year. And as of every year, we're increasing in numbers.
Identified students, right? Not
Yes.
enrollment. Okay.
Enrollment, identified students. So currently we are at about 1,000 students, which puts us another percentage point over what last year was. So we're increasing in identified students under IDEA, which means they could be anywhere from a student with ARTIC, speech and language, to a student with severe needs. Which again puts in another issue when it comes to funding, because a student with ARTIC services may only need speech, where a student with more severe needs might need speech, OT, PT, academics, counseling, social work, things like that. So there's a whole realm of what needs a student may have within the district. So that puts another issue in, is your service providers and how many services student needs. So with our increased enrollment, that comes from many things. You know, we do have a transient population, but Wyoming is one of the states that still has the funding for students with disabilities. So you'll find a lot of students do come here because they can get their needs met. So those are some things that we have to look into. But with the increase in numbers, we're not going down anytime soon here, which makes it difficult too when you have a cap on how you're going to meet those needs, because under law, we still have an obligation for those students. The other problem we're seeing is that the out-of-district placements. So we're having a higher need of students with social emotional issues where services can't be provided here, even though we would like to have them in their least restrictive environment. A lot of those students can't get their services or their needs met here. So we're having to find other placements for those students. When you look in an out-of-district placement, because we can't service them in the schools, you're looking anywhere from over $5,000 a month to over $20,000 a month, which in turn is about $200,000 or more per child if they're placed out of district. So those are some huge costs to the district.
Casey, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I was
sorry.
really stupid about SPED when I first came back to the district, and I have learned a ton from you and our staff. But can we just say, no, we're not going to pay for those kids?
We can't, because we still have the obligation under IDEA. So we still have to give them the services that they need, regardless of where it's at. So some of those students, like I said, you know, you have the social emotional pieces, and being here, we can't meet those needs because we don't have the facilities that could provide those to those students. So we do have to look at that. But then that poses another issue because when we look at Wyoming, everybody's cutting. So we're cutting it Department of Health, we're cutting everywhere. So who's going to be responsible for those kids? In some point, somebody has to pay for that. And a lot of times it ends up on the school district. So we're still looking for some of those placements, but even in Wyoming, you're not finding a lot of out-of-district placement facilities taking students. So we're looking at other states. Last year, we had to look at Georgia, we had to look at Boston, we had to look at back east and Oregon. So that is another problem with special education and with some of our funding. So we're doing the best we can because we know that the costs are increasing. We're not getting that reimbursement, but yet we still have the legal liabilities of servicing those kids.
So we had a couple more questions through the comment
Hang on
feed.
just real quick. I think Kelly had something to clarify.
sorry.
before we
Go ahead,
jump to
Kelly,
the
please.
next
Oh,
one.
no.
Sorry.
No, sorry. Thanks, Steph. Just real quick, I wanted to add on what Nicole, when she answered the question about the sports and the activities, losing money due to the COVID restrictions. That is a great question. And Nicole had mentioned, yes, they're losing some of that revenue. I just want to make sure to clarify that that would be revenue for an associated student fundraiser account. Those are not general fund. Those are not salaries, benefits, coaching stipends. Those aren't anything like that. Those are completely separate from that. So I know those things are an inconvenience and they're all part of the experience for them, for activities and athletics. But I just want to make sure that that information is very, very clear. That is completely separate. It is a little bit of a slush fund for fundraising that some of our schools use, which is a nice thing, but it does not go into the general fund budget whatsoever. So thank you, Steph, for letting me do
All right.
that.
Thanks, Kelly. So the next question we had was from Cole. What technology subscriptions could be cut that would not have an impact on student learning or even have a minimal impact, for example, PlanBook? Well, Cole, I will say that when we last did the cost savings task force, we cut well over $100,000 out of our software budget. We went through and evaluated all of the subscriptions that we had paid for years, looked at the usage, looked at the benefits, took out the things that weren't being used or weren't, we couldn't justify the cost of those. So that has been looked at in the past. I will say that in the last couple of years, and many people think that it's ruined their lives, we adopted Education Framework, which helps us to make sure that all of our software is FERPA compliant and takes care of our, not for FERPA, COPA, make sure that our student data is taken care of. So we were able to cut several programs that maybe were not treating our student data in the best way possible. Anytime we look at a new adoption, we go through that. I will say that PlanBook is a very, very, very low cost in my budget compared to everything else, even other subscriptions that we use in the district. PlanBook is very minimal.
Another question is the school district going to run a Democratic organization? I keep receiving things home from school that lean very left. This is definitely concerning. So I'll just repeat myself that I've said this over and over. First off, public education isn't Democratic or isn't a Democrat, and it isn't Republican. It isn't left. It isn't right. We have to make decisions based off of the rules and the laws that come down and data. And they're not popular. And so if someone doesn't have the same belief of something that we're putting out, even though we're putting it out because it's the rules, not because it's our belief, that doesn't mean that we're leaning political. COVID in and of itself has made some interesting things, and unfortunately it's been made political, and the school district is not taking that political stance. So I'm assuming that this is coming more from wearing masks, please social distance and do those things. The district's doing that based off of the medical experts and suggestions and the research and working with our medical professionals locally and our public health officer. Both school districts have been working with them very closely. We've had very limited, if any, spread within the school. And right now it's community spread. And so we are making decisions based off of the recommendations that are coming to us to keep our staff and students safe. We do not send messages based off of being a Democrat or Republican or left or right. Now, people's opinions and what they believe may not agree with what we're sending out, but it is our duty from the district side to keep things safe and running, to continue to express the messages of our medical professionals and the CDC and what the state has put in place for us in order to keep our schools running. So we're not Democrats and we're not Republicans. We're not left, we're not right. Our messages are simply to keep our students and staff safe.
The bottom line, we want to keep our schools open. We want to keep our students in schools. It was not good for people to go home last March. It wasn't good for a lot of our families, and we will do whatever it takes to make sure we can keep our kids in school. I think that's the biggest thing. And again, this was talked about a lot at our board meeting last night. So if you didn't have a chance to watch that, a lot of our trustees addressed that as well.
And we're not getting rid of Plan Book. Real quick, I see some people going on there. Again, people aren't going to like the decisions that we make all the time, but there are pillars to good teaching, and planning is one of them. If you do not plan and you're not prepared for the classroom, you might be able to wing it a couple times, but overall, even the best teachers, if they are not planning, they're going to crash and not deliver the best instruction that kids deserve. And Plan Book is an electronic means, especially with our current situation if we have to go online, but it gives the administrators access to help holding our teachers accountable, but being able to have access to that when they're observing things, and plus the benefits go on and on. So just because Plan Book was used as an example, please know we're not.
No.
Steph and her team have done an excellent job, honestly, at going through every single line item budget within the
Technology budget.
technology, yeah. Well, the different apps and stuff that are programs that are used, and only keeping the ones that are highly utilized.
And I will say that I work closely with Jody Garner in the curriculum office, and we evaluate every program. Her department evaluates it from a curriculum perspective. Does this tie in with what our goals are in the district? My department looks at it. Does it work with the existing technology that we have? And we have really trimmed a lot of fat on our software budget over the last, I would say, probably almost 6 years now, Scott, just to make sure that we want the most effective and efficient tools in the classroom available to our teachers and our students.
Speaking of Plan Book, we have provided some training opportunities on Plan Book, and we have one coming up. Whitney and Karina are excellent at Plan Book. And so their next training is actually next Wednesday, November 18th from 4 to 6. The feedback we received from the last training that they provided said that people who attended in person here in the cab really got a lot of help and support from Whitney and Karina. And so you can attend virtually or here at the cab, and we will socially distance and wear masks. Karina and Whitney have put a lot of time and effort into Plan Book and have currently been uploading all of the secondary standards into planbook.com so that teachers from Rock Springs High School and junior high can easily drop their standards into the plans. And so they are excellent at supporting our teachers in planbook.com. So if you're available next Wednesday, November 18th at 4 o'clock, we'd love to have you be a part of that training.
Thanks for the support, Jody, from your department, and for all of the teachers that are really helping with
Yes.
that. It's important. Everybody, we're all on board for that, and we move forward together with it. So thank you for leading that effort.
Absolutely.
And speaking of cost savings and just even this year in savings, Ms. Garner is our new curriculum director that joined us this year. And with COVID and just a bunch of other things, she has done an amazing job at really identifying a lot of our expertise and leadership within the district and utilizing our own to provide the professional development and training opportunities. So good job.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Sweetwater One has some amazing teachers, and it's just been so fun to be a part of that. So,
All right, we received another question. Do we receive any subsidies from software companies? No, we cannot receive. I can't think of a word. Scott, you
Perks.
can jump any perks or bribes or any motivators to select a certain piece of software over another. What we do is evaluate what meets the needs in the district. So if we're looking for math, we work with curriculum to see what would meet the needs of our students. We do not, no, we have to find the best thing. I will say that once a decision is made on the piece of software that best fits what we need, we can receive multi-year discounts. We are able to take advantage of those with the option, of course, always to get out if the funding is not available for renewal. Scott, did I address that okay? This is definitely your area of.
Yep, you did good. Our purchasing policies strive to provide fair and open competition. And so that's the main driving force. But like you say, there's a process that you can go through to select what company is in the best interest of the district.
Yes. All right. Do we have any other questions out there from anyone? Not, we might go ahead and mute our microphones for a little bit. If somebody else has something to say, we'll be keeping an eye. Anybody who may join in a little bit later, just know we're still here. We're waiting. We'll be here until 8:30.
Can I clarify the funding around special education?
Yes, actually, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so we are capped, and as Casey mentioned, that we were actually capped at a low year for us, and so that kind of put us in a bind. Now, there is a mechanism to provide funding for that gap. So as Casey mentioned, the first year, last year, we were out about 750,000. We met certain criteria, so we were able to get about 700,000 of that back. So at the end of the day, we were out about 50,000. Going into this year, our budget gap was about 1.5 million. And we don't know yet if we are going to meet that criteria to receive that additional funding. And so as a result, we can't put that in the budget. So we have to operate as if we were going to, have to bridge that funding gap, which we did and which we are. But there is a chance that we would qualify for some of that additional funding.
So Scott, this might be a stupid question, but when you say meet the criteria, what is that exactly? What would determine if we do that to get that money back?
There are two criteria. So you have to have an overall increase in cost, which we know that we will. Of that, you have to increase in your out-of-district placements. And
Okay.
so at this time, we don't know if we are going to meet those, but we should know here in the next few months.
Okay. Thank you.
And we've got a comment on there, Scott, for our, to make sure our audience can hear, we're going to turn your microphone up.
Okay.
So Marty, thank you for
Sorry,
letting us
Marty.
know that.
Oh, see, and I
Thank you,
read, it
Scott.
says quite difficult to hear, Mr. Duncan. I read that as, that's really tough to hear.
Oh.
It's early. It's early.
Scott's just not loud, naturally loud like the rest of us. Sorry.
I definitely do not have a teacher voice. That's for sure.
Does anyone else have anything in the room that they want to clarify while we have a captive audience of 37 people? All right. As I said, we will be here for questions till 8:30. And if you were only able to catch the end of this one, we'll also be back at 11. So we're still here.
Oh, will you put it on real quick, Zach? I'm going to clarify.
Just that came my way
I just
now.
want to make sure that I clarify. We are following all the guidelines. Some people are choosing to wear their mask the whole time, but I promise you, we are 6 feet apart. I'll even move further away. Um, I know there were comments that were flying all over social media, and we got some texts this morning. I promise you, we are 6 feet apart.
Yes,
So
I
we are following the guidelines.
agreed. I value my personal space a lot. So Casey, stay over there. You too, Nicole.
I will.
Getting texts about that.
Okay, so sorry, we had a couple more comments. Jenny said, thank you for taking time to address the questions. Of course, Jenny, that is what this is for. I mean, that's the point of this. And really, we're looking for ideas and, we want to know what people value in education. Mr. Roney out in Wamsetter said, so proud to be a part of this great district. And we had Eastside, Mrs. Searle say, thank you for hosting this forum. You're a rock star team. I don't know about that, Searle. It's pretty early, but thank you guys so much. We really appreciate all of the comments and the questions we've received this morning. Mr. Jackman, great forum.
The presidential election, awaiting the true results.
Go ahead and read it, Nicole.
My question is, if the results of the election race bring strange and controversial orders for the school district, we'll have to obey them. So what happens is the Wyoming Department of Health actually has their continuation orders. That's a good question, Janae. The Wyoming Department of Health actually puts out continuation orders that gives the K-12 schools the rules that we need to follow.
Those come from the governor.
They
and
do
Department of
come
Health.
from the governor and Dr. Harris, and we'll follow those. And so honestly, that is what's guiding us. And again, we meet weekly with the medical professionals in the community and also Dr. Station. Both school districts do, just to get updates and know how we can support each other. But I don't want to sound rude or disrespectful when I say this, but it really doesn't matter what the presidential election brings forth or what political stances or opinions anyone has. That is not what is the driver for any of our decisions and our follow through. I do know that the decisions and the orders are controversial by some, but that is not the arena that we choose to get into. We follow the rules, and what's
The
really
health for health. I
for-
think that's really important
yes,
that we're
for health.
focusing on it. We're not following just blind rules. We're following health orders
health orders
that are in the benefit of our community and our students and our staff.
Yeah, and so we'll enforce whatever those orders are that come down. We have to. We don't have a choice. It doesn't matter what our opinion is. We will enforce whatever orders come down so that we can keep our doors open and keep school going for the kids. So we will obey them. And I think that Sweetwater One has got quite the reputation around the state. I hear frequently because we also enforce them. So we are not going above and beyond. We're actually doing exactly what's asked of us, but enforcing them is what makes someone super popular. But we will continue, that's the right thing to do, and we'll continue to do the right thing. It's not fun. It's probably been the worst part to COVID because people are not nice, but we will continue to enforce them because that's what's in the best interest of our students and staff in keeping schools open.
So I'm going to do just a really quick, I did a little
We have
bit.
Another question. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yep. So plan book, the cost per teacher is $9 for the district, but what we really look at is the cost of something per student. So it's approximately 87 cents a student. So that is not a huge impact on our budget, on our general fund. We did have another question. Was the new football field, basketball courts taken out of building maintenance? If not, can reallocation take place to fund areas of educational need, local or legislative? If so, why with the FCI so high?
Okay, first part of the question was the, the state allows us to replace tracks under major maintenance. So a portion of that was major maintenance money, but it was a very small portion. The majority of the funds came from the rec mill. And that's the reason is because when that field was built, it was decided to put an artificial turf field on there. The state of Wyoming does not build artificial turfs, nor do they maintain artificial turfs unless you have a reason. Like up in Farson, they shut the water off, so that's why they got an artificial turf field. But here in town, they didn't have a good reason, so initially the field was built with rec mill dollars, and so it has to be maintained from that point with rec mill dollars. So the majority, I would say about 75% of that field was paid for with rec mill money. Small portion was paid for out of major maintenance money. So, and we were within our rights to do that. And that field, that track was in dire need of being repaired or replaced. We couldn't repair it because there was an underground spring that developed under it. So the cause of the failure of the track warranted using major maintenance money. But like I said, the majority, more than 75% of that money came from rec mill dollars. As far as why is the score so high? That system, that the school itself was built in multiple stages. I mean, those of you who are from Rock Springs area, you can go back to I think the late 70s, early 80s when there was one portion of it built. Then they added on to it, and since then it's been added on to like 5 or 6 times. The mechanical systems have never been really upgraded. The mechanical systems are huge in that building. The structure of the building has really never changed that much. As they added on, they just added on to the building. They didn't do a whole lot of structural changes. With time, things get old. Windows, we started replacing windows last year, but that building has hundreds and hundreds of windows. The doors in the building have never been addressed in years. And so we have a plan. In fact, we have a plan to order slabs of doors that come in, and then we go ahead and put the maintenance on. But just to give folks ideas on what the cost is, you look at how many doors are in that building. Each door, because when you replace a door, you replace the door and the hardware. You're looking at $1,800 to $2,200 per door. Now, when you look at how many doors are up in that building and you start multiplying the amount of doors, that becomes a huge expense. And the doors are not really considered a major portion of the building. I have to, because of the scores of the mechanical system, address the mechanical system first. It's not what I want to do, it's what the state tells me I have to do. So I have an FCI score that rates the mechanical systems because of their age and their inefficiencies at a 2. This year, we slowly go through the systems. This year, over the summertime, we finished the auditorium. We put all DDC controls in there because they were in failure. We have to control the temperature of the auditorium. Last year, we recoated the roof. And then the other thing that we did over the summer was we had 3 units up there with 18 zones a piece, and that was in the original portion of the building. We spent over $800,000, but because of the size of the building, $800,000 is relatively nothing compared to the overall score of the building. So to go through that building to possibly bring it up to or to lower the score significantly, I would probably have to spend on the average about $5 million a year for the next 3 or 4 years in order to lower that score. So that's kind of why the score is what it is. It's not because of lack of trying, because like I said, we do spend an awful lot of money at the high school this year, well over $1 million, and that did not include the track. So, a significant amount of money is going into the building. It's a massive building, and it hasn't really had any major maintenance done to it in a long time. The systems are old and they get older every year. So we end up doing what we can as issues arise.
Thank you, Dan. I think that's really important for people to hear. We only have about 11 minutes left, and we had a question from a parent who is very concerned about what might be changed in the teaching curriculum for the children. Jody, I think that would be great for you to kind of talk about that process and what that looks
Yes.
like for the district.
Yes, Mrs. Simpson, thank you for your concerns. As far as the curriculum goes, the curriculum is set and established, and we will not be changing from what we have been, what we've put in order at this time. I can tell you that there are policies in place for the district that prevent us from addressing controversial issues. And so at this point, we do not predict any changes to the curriculum.
So, Ms. Gardner, does the federal government or the state dictate our curriculum? Or even, I think the concern was around if there's changes in politics. And I think what is important for people to know is that they don't dictate our curriculum. They might dictate some standards or things like that. So could you just clarify that for them?
Yes, the curriculum is not governed by the United States or by the state. We sit down and look at the curriculum together, and we just follow, they may offer an update to standards, but really it does not, it stays away from controversial topics as well.
I think it's, Kelly, I was just going to
Mhm.
say, I feel like sometimes I can come in from the outsider or the non-educator perspective and just kind of share what I see, but the adoption process is really massive, and it involves a big group of teachers across all grade levels when they look at a math curriculum or a science or an ELA curriculum, and they bring in different vendors and they look at different pieces and they find everything that can kind of map and match up to the standards that we're required to teach. It's not just a whim, and that goes out for the district to test. I mean, the process, I'm really impressed with the process that's in place for adopting a new curriculum.
One thing, Jody, you were talking about, and I appreciate Ms. Simpson's question because over the years, we've had some concerns come forward that perhaps there's a controversial issue that's being taught in the classroom. I do understand, where Ms. Simpson's coming from. I had a lot of years up at Rock Springs High School. And I think the idea there, and our policy is actually very good. It addresses those issues. And I think the idea is there's a lot of things going on in our nation right now, a lot of things locally that we're working through that are really unprecedented. But I think the idea here is to engage kids, but not to sway them one way or the other. The idea is to give them the information and teach kids to think. And that way they can take those skills and they can apply that in any area. And so I encourage, if there's any questions about what is going on, the classroom teacher is a great contact on there. We don't want any of our parents thinking that there's something, going on in the classroom that's trying to sway kids one way or the other. And in most of the situations that I've had come my way, it really turns out to be that it's a communication, making sure everybody's on the same page. And then once everyone knows that, then, oh, okay, then we're good to move that forward. But really the idea there is to hook kids on things that are interesting for them so that they get involved. But then the idea is really the thinking skills so that they learn how to think for themselves and create their own opinion based on the information that they're given, but not to tell them what their opinion should be.
And as far as the curriculum for teaching the voting process and government decisions, that is in the curriculum. And if you would ever like to call with any concerns that you have, I'd be happy to share what the exact curriculum is.
Okay, we have about 7 minutes left, and we have one more comment that says, sounds like we need a new building for the high school. Are there grants for that?
No, there's not a grant for to build a new high school. But if you go back to when we did our original planning for the satellite school, one of the ideas was originally we were going to build out a whole new replacement high school, but they didn't have the funding for it, so they kind of wanted us to size down, and we presented them a phased-in program. The phased-in program is we're built 44,000 square feet. We take care of the overcrowdedness in the existing high school, and eventually we would add on to this school to replace the high school. I was asked at a select committee, and it was the final select committee before going to the JAC, how long I projected this building to be a viable building, and I had told them 10 years. That was what they wanted to hear, and so unless things change around in the state, and I'm hopeful that they will, I can see that within 10 years' time, we would have a new high school on the existing site where satellite is, and it would be a replacement school.
Thank you, Dan.
We're going to have to get Dan's mic turned up a little bit because either that or the age for me is kicking in. I'm having a hard time hearing you, Dan. But thank you.
Hey,
The-
Dan, can you use major maintenance money or rec mill dollars for instruction in the general fund?
No, good question. The way the state statute is written, major maintenance money can only be used for major maintenance. Rec mill's the same thing. It is a dedicated funding stream, and it can only go to the maintenance, repair, and replacement of within a building. And the same goes for rec mill's a little bit different because rec mill they can actually use to add. If you don't have it, you can actually get it as long as it's maintained from that point on with that funding stream. But any of the money that I receive outside of the block grant money cannot go into the block grant for purposes of education, wages. I can't pay for my men's time with it. If there is a clause in one of the state statutes is that if I project how much time it would take one of my folks or any of my folks to do a project, I can get a portion of that reimbursed, but generally speaking, it's very difficult to make that happen. So as a rule, major maintenance can only be used for major maintenance projects. And if we do something in-house, it pays for material over $1,000, but it does not pay for any of the labor.
Our school funding model is very complicated it's a great model in the sense that it really does give equity across our districts. But it is very, very complicated. It's 18 years into this and I'm still learning it. Scott's definitely the expert there, but
I'm sure he gets tired of our stupid
he
questions.
probably does. But,
That's why he's wearing a mask.
it's just like tech gets sick of Kelly and I too in our
No,
stupid
we never get
questions.
tired. I know I have job security as long as I work with you ladies. I hope.
It's very transparent. Please get on the website and look at all of the information. If you have feedback or suggestions or anything for us to look at, we're welcoming everything. More minds on this one's going to be better than a minimal amount. And again, these are just a bank of generated ideas so that when the decision is made by the state, we're ready to go. And we've, listened to everybody and gotten ideas and feedback so that we can move forward, hopefully in the most productive manner. And I'll just go back to that other answer. I hope that none of it, I hope we don't have to do any of it, but
I want to
just
do
don't
a
know.
quick, before we run out of time, I want to do a quick plug. If you were unable to attend this session or any of the sessions that we're going to have today, if you could please, you have some comments, you have some feedback, we have an email account open right now, communications@sw1.k12.wy.us. Please feel welcome to send emails, ideas, feedback. Let us know what you value in education. Let us know what you think is important. we're taking all of that information. That'll be open through 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, I believe. Is that right, Kelly? Yep, tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And we will bring all of the feedback that we get from that email account back to the cost savings task force at our meeting on Thursday, I believe.
Yep. We'll have them ready to go.
Well, I have to give you credit, Ms. McGovern. I really didn't think we would have this many people logged in this early, so good idea holding the forum this early.
Everyone is more excited to participate if I can participate from my couch. All right, we just have 1 minute left. Kelly, do you want to?
I just wanted to tell everybody thank you for those that are here with me to bring this and for everybody that's participating. So all ideas are welcome. We're really trying to do what's best for Sweetwater #1 in a tough time. So we welcome any ideas that you have. And thank you for that. And we'll look forward to our next one.
See you at 11.
I know, I almost deferred to you.